Hello, friends. Did you miss us? Oh, we missed you all. We are finally back with another episode of our weekly highlights. Yes, it's been, I actually don't know how many weeks it's been, but let's let that slide for a bit. In any event, when we are usually recording, this is the usually weekly show where we talk about the awesome happenings, the awesome resources, and much more that are all documented on this week's Our Weekly issue. My name is Eric Nansen. Yes, I'm definitely rusty on this, so bear with me here, but thank goodness I don't have to be rusty alone here. You know, we have the pro here joined at the virtual hip here. Mike Thomas. Mike, please keep me honest. It's been a minute since I had this mic in front of me.
It's been a while. It's a short week with Thanksgiving here in the U.S. We're a little all over the place, but we're going to get an episode out.
That's right. We're striking now because I know after today the kids are off from school for the week and no recordings happening there, even though I am trying desperately to resurrect my tech setup for some future live stream of dev work. It's this close, Mike. It's this close. I think you're going to like it when it's out there, but you know me, I over-engineer all the things and I'm proud of it.
Never.
No, not at all. Well, speaking of hopefully not over-engineering, although sometimes it does happen from time to time, let's check who curated this issue. Oh, yes, it's Mr. Over-Engineer himself. Yes, it was me and my turn. So how's that for a coincidence? First episode in a few weeks, and it's the issue I ended up talking or curating. But that's probably for the best since I got a nice preview of what we're going to talk about here. And we got some great selection here. But as always, this is a team effort, folks. And we have an awesome team of curators that help each other out. So my tremendous thanks to the team, as always, for their tremendous help and for the wonderful pull requests from all of you in the community. I think I merged 9 of them in this issue. So that's rocking. Love the open source mindset here. So let's dive right into it, shall we? And yes, it wouldn't be a 2025 Our Weekly issue without our first visit into the world of LLMs and AI. And no, we're not going to bore you with any LinkedIn clickbait stuff here. I have always been bullish, if you will, on the tooling that's we're seeing in the community, especially on the R side, that's building upon some solid foundations in an open way. And of course, we've covered the Elmer package quite a bit in many episodes this year, and frankly, even early last year as well. And that's really starting to mature with a lot of great extensions building upon it. But what is interesting about this first highlight here is this extension, first of which, is not coming from Posit directly. And I think it is encompassing an area that I know I've been wanting to learn how to best handle, that I think a lot of other frameworks that are somewhat either proprietary or at least have an opinionated workflow do expose to you, but maybe not in a very transparent way. So what we're talking about here is the idea of not just a single quote-unquote agent in your LLM generation or utilization. We're talking about multi-agent workflows. And that is coming to us from a very fun named package, Mini007. This is a new R package authored by Mohammed Al-Fado Ihaden. I know I didn't get that right, but he's been a part of the R community for many, many years. I've actually followed a lot of his work in the Shiny space, but it looks like he's turning his attention to LLM pipelines as well. And so this first highlight comes to us from a blog post on the R Consortium blog, as well as a link to a recent presentation from Mohammed at the RAI conference that just happened about a month or so ago. And there was actually, I think it was a hybrid of a workshop session where Mohammed walked through the use cases and kind of getting started with Mini007. So we'll have a link in the show notes to the GitHub repository. I think that's one of the best places to go for this. And it's a very comprehensive README here of just what is possible with this package. So first, let's again, frame this as this is building on top of Elmer. And you start off with building a chat object via Elmer using either the Frontier model provider or perhaps a self-hosted provider. That's all the same. But what Mini 007 brings to you is a new custom class called agent. And this is where you can add a single agent with its own custom instructions, its own usage guidelines, and of course tying it with that previous chat object that you create at the outset. And this is already giving you a nice idea here where with these agents, you could have one, you could have two, you could have however many you like, and they could each be tailored to a different aspect of your workflow. So one of the examples in the README is maybe you want a custom agent tailored to translating, say, a foreign language. You might have another agent that's needs to be a little more powerful. Maybe it's trying to help answer research questions or at least understand the content of what it's translating. And perhaps you have even another agent that's trying to do some, maybe new ideas, maybe new data analyses or new summarizations. And so there is an example here, like I mentioned in this README, of this kind of three-pronged approach to multi-agents. Again, within each of these, you give it a name, you give it a custom instruction via the instruction parameter, and which object, like I said, that you created with Elmer at the outset. Now, these are still kind of separate. Here's where the interesting stuff really comes into play. You now have a new way of orchestrating these together via the lead agent class. And this is where, again, it builds upon that existing Elmer object for the chat. But now you can say for this lead agent, use these other three agents as the way you delegate responsibilities or delegate how these different agents answer the questions. This is where I know I have seen, at least from my limited experience of LLM technologies, different, platforms such as like Claude or maybe others that let you do multi-agent stuff, maybe even behind the scenes. Maybe they wrap that for you, but you don't necessarily get a lot of transparency in how that's actually built. But throughout the Mini 007 kind of paradigm for running the functions, you can have what they literally have a function for, a human in the loop, to help kind of stagger and put some like either breakpoints or like checkpoints to make sure that this multi-agent workflow is doing what you are expecting. That's both for kind of like, a stepwise kind of approach to reviewing what's happening. And you can also review the plan that it wants to do before you actually start executing things, which again, in my industry is something you definitely want to look at. It's just what exactly is going to go on under its control before you actually kick off those analyses. So that is really interesting. And then another interesting part is, again, due to this multi-agent workflow, you could have it actually use different alternative models in some of these agents, and either you yourself pick what you think is the best response, or you could even let the lead agent use these different, say, sub-agents with different sub-models, say from OpenAI or Anthropic or the like, and then you can let that lead agent do the decision for you and still have it explain to you why it chose the way it did. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I could see a lot of interesting use cases being built upon this as you think about either in the automation space or maybe a more sophisticated data pipeline where you've got different, like what the Tidyverse suite of packages has popularized, or the R for data science workflow. You got to import your data, you got to maybe do some transformations, summarizations, and then reporting. Maybe this is a way to give you even more custom flexibility in those kind of pipelines and then feed that into some other ETL process or the like. This is just me literally spitballing here. But I think there's a lot of potential here. And the fact that it's building upon Elmer, I feel like there's a lot of confidence, a lot of at least a robust approach to start this. As someone new to all this still, I want to try with maybe some basic projects. But it definitely got me thinking that this might be the ticket to some more sophisticated workflows in this space. But curious, Mike, I don't know if you have experience in multi-agent workflows, and what do you think about Mini 007 here?
I don't have a lot of experience with multi-agent workflows, to be honest. Haven't barely scratched the surface with agents and tools and all of that. But I do know Hadley Wickham gave a great presentation at PositConf that was for audiences like me that had no idea what that terminology was, and boiled it down to very simplistic terms that resonated with kind of my approach to R. But I like the R6 approach to this Mini 007 package, because it feels like we're creating sort of building blocks that we're putting together and orchestrating in a way that I think lines up with how the best practices currently are with these agentic workflows. They're kind of little building blocks that we put together and stitch together in particular ways to try to accomplish the task at hand. So I think it's a very nice parallel in terms of the design of the API for this Mini 007 package, with a lot of really nice little features as well. This set budget allows you to actually set a particular budget in terms of dollars, at least is shown in the example here, that essentially make it impossible for you to go over that budget with your LLM, frontier provider of choice, as well as provide you with some warnings as you approach that budget at thresholds that you set yourself. So very handy things, I would imagine, especially when you're orchestrating these multi-agent workflows that are calling these LLM APIs quite often, maybe more so than what you would just typically be used to as you interact with sort of the web-based, ChatGPT or Claudes of the world as well. That idea, as you mentioned, Eric, that you can have multiple agents, and the example that Mohammed gives here is have a researcher agent, a summarizer agent, and a translator agent, all sort of working together to answer this one example question that says, tell me about the economic situation in Algeria, summarize it into 3 bullet points. That's the summarizer after the researcher, then translate it into German, and that's the translator there at the end. So sort of 3 different agents all executing on this particular task. There's this downstream sort of domino effect workflow, and there's this really nice function in here called visualize_plan that actually shows this sort of relationship as a DAG in a visual pane in your editor, which is really cool. I wonder sort of what the underlying package is that's being used to create this sort of workflow diagram. I imagine maybe VizNetwork or something like that, but I haven't dug into the internals of the package enough. But again, just a really nice example, sort of along with that set budget function. This visualize plan function is a really nice to have utility that this Mini 007 package provides, as well as that human in the loop set_HITL human in the loop that allows you to decide which steps in the particular workflow you want to interject and have that human be sort of a decision maker in the process as well. So I really appreciate the design here. I really like the way that Mohammed was able to articulate this package in the YouTube video, which I'd highly recommend you watch. There's also accompanying PDF slides as well, and really interesting, sort of lightweight but incredibly useful framework that Mohammed has provided for us, our users, to work with these agentic workflows.
Yeah, and I was combing through the repo. It's actually very minimal dependencies other than Elmer itself, which you would expect. This is not a heavy footprint, which to me, something seems as, ambitious to my eyes as this. You would think it's going to import all sorts of stuff. And no, it's maybe like 6 dependencies here. That's a very lightweight footprint. And I think there's a lot of potential. It's a very clean code base. And I'm definitely going to be watching that presentation and seeing those slides, because I'm still starting small in my typical LLM usage, but there are a lot of things that we're hearing, especially in the life sciences side. I hear presentations about different, statisticians and different companies building multi-agents for automation, but we don't really know how they did it yet. This may be a case where I can at least prototype what they might be doing and translate that to what we're trying to do at our company and whatnot. So, yep, this is going into the December kind of hacking list of me to explore cool stuff when I get some time off. Well, as many know, Mike, we often leverage what we talk about at the outset, large language models, to help make things faster for us, to get to that answer more quickly and whatnot. Well, there's been a lot of great traction in terms of fast linting of your code to clean up what I often get wrong. Maybe a missing brace, maybe lines that I should have had a carriage return somewhere, or maybe, parameters that I misspecified. We often look for ways to just speed up our correction of that instead of just poking through that manually and hoping for the best. I admit, since about 6 months ago or so, I've adopted the utility called Air by Posit into my positron experience. Oh, Nelly, that's been so helpful to me. Now, that has been great for just kind of the basic formatting, although I haven't really used it to its full potential yet. But what if I told you, Mike, there is a new linting framework out there that when you point it to the entire source code of R itself, the R files of R itself, it takes just 700 milliseconds to lint that entire code base. Would you believe me?
No, I wouldn't believe you.
That's what I thought. But nonetheless, it is real. And it's fantastic. And what we're talking about here is the Jarl utility. This has been authored by Etienne Botcher. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And boy, oh boy, this came out of nowhere. But apparently this has been in the works for a while, because this is actually one of the projects that was help funded by the R Consortium grant program. Now, just what is Jarl exactly? Well, I kind of said it at the outset. It is, quote unquote, just another R linter. But boy, oh boy, I think that is selling itself short, because one of the biggest reasons it has that huge speed, promise, and actually proved that speed, is that this is written in Rust. Rust is becoming a lot more common now in the R community, especially in light of, I think I saw a great presentation at PosiConf about the Rust ecosystem in R. We've seen a few utilities spin up. And this is just another example of piggybacking off of the promise and the enhancements of Rust to make something blazing fast and with good quality. So this is not as meant to be a strict replacement for what you may be familiar with, and that is the linter package, which many of us have used for years and years within our various workflows, whether in our Studio IDE or VS Code or Positron. Linter's been around for a while. I can say that it's probably getting a little bit longer in the tooth, so it might not have the best performance for larger code bases, but Jarl is definitely helping in a lot of those use cases. There is, on the blog post that we'll link to as always, there is actually a screencast showing that it's not just frivolous, pointing to this R code base. It is real. You can play it, and it's only about 16 seconds. And most of those is just looking at the console. It is just as fast. And the example that's in the blog post here, we see the formatting or linting, if you will, of an apply function, or a function that uses apply under the hood. And this is where it's not just looking at the syntax, it's looking at, is there a better way to do it? And sure enough, it picks, there is a better way to do it. So if you want to do your own version of a mean for rows, instead of just doing the apply function verbatim, you can use the row means function. But this Jarl is intelligent enough to find these kind of areas where maybe there's a base R function that can help you out, and maybe you just didn't know about it. Trust me, that happens to me quite a bit. Every time I read blog posts, I often see like the nzchar function in R base. And I'm like, what is that? And then it dawned on me, oh, that's non-zero characters. Silly me. So I think Jarl is going to be great at picking up things like this. It is a single binary. So this is one of those things where you can install it on multiple platforms. I'll have to see how well it works on Linux. Hopefully it does, but usually Rust things work pretty well there. And then you can just use the custom extensions that are also available to utilize this in your IDE of choice, such as VS Code or Positron. So definitely look at the extension store for ways that you can plug in Jarl for those workflows. It is acknowledged that this is a very early effort. However, this is a really, really promising effort. So I definitely want to try this in my dev environment to see not just it picking up some of these base R, maybe kind of misses that I might have. I'll be interested to see what it can do with Shiny code too. Maybe it can help me lint some of that as well and make things a bit more performant. So again, credit where credit's due here. I love seeing this tooling come out, and Athena has really done an excellent job here with Jarl, and I'll be keeping an eye on this quite a bit. When I feel the need for speed, I'm going to Jarl for my linting needs. Yes, I came up with that on the fly. You're welcome.
That was beautiful. To me, it feels like Air just came out, and I can't believe that I am still trying to pick up Air, and now we have Jarl, which is sort of built on top of that. It sounds like that is potentially even better. And the fact that it can identify these inefficiencies in our code, right? It's not even incorrect code in the examples that Etienne shows us. It's inefficiencies in our code, and actually fix those with this -- fix flag in your Jarl command to the terminal is mind-blowing, and it opens up the door for just a tremendous amount of possibilities, I imagine, to hopefully take that junk inefficient code that your LLM spat back to you and clean it up, because that is, I feel like, what most of my day is these days. I don't know if that resonates
I
with
feel
anybody
seen
else
on
out
that
there.
one too, my friend. Oh goodness, yes.
Yes, too many for loops. Please, train on the per documentation, for the love of God.
Hot take incoming. I love it.
Not a lot of tidy code, unfortunately, from what I've seen. But hopefully it's getting better. Opus 4.5 just dropped. I have to check it out in Gemini 3. But this is a fantastic utility. The fact that it's just built on Rust and the blazing speed. It's almost like my initial experiences with DuckDB, where I would hit enter and it would happen so fast that I would think something was wrong, that I think I screwed something up. So I think we're going to see a similar experience here with this Jarl utility, especially when you're leveraging it on code bases that are smaller than the entire R source code, which I would imagine is most of the code bases that you work with on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things I struggle with the Air formatter that linter has sort of traditionally done a better job of is incorporating some particular custom, or overrides, if you will, of the default linting behavior. There's some situations where I like a little bit more a little bit more space, a little bit more carriage returns in my code from line to line that I think we don't necessarily have the control over with Air. As opposed to, I believe, with the linter package in R, we've had the ability to override some of those defaults and set up some custom formatting or linting options. And it sounds like maybe from this blog post that is on the roadmap for Jarl. And I'm really excited to bring my very opinionated linting decisions and code styling and formatting decisions into the fray here as I continue to leverage these fantastic new code linting utilities that are coming out for us.
I dare say we know which opinion thing you will put in there. Get those for loops out of here, baby. I can definitely concur with that side of it. And like I said, I'll be interested to see just out of the box what it does to Shiny code, because there are sometimes things lint to Shiny code that I don't quite agree with in terms of spacing and maybe the way I specify parameters, that I'm like, it's hard to customize that. So I'm gonna give it a shot on one of my dev projects. I'll hopefully be able to install it in my custom Nix configs and give it give it a whirl. But Positron works just as great. As he mentions in the post, there are extensions for Positron, VS Code, and the Z editor, which I know is getting a lot more traction in the DevOps space as well. So maybe, hopefully, RStudio support soon. I don't know, but either way, I'm going to give it a shot. And rounding out our highlights today, we've been looking at a lot of different things this year in our weekly. And one of them has been a way that, especially those of us working in an organization, no matter big or small, we often are given either rules or at least try to adhere to best practices with respect to how things are styled, so to speak. Maybe you have a company-wide branding set of guidelines for your presentations, reports, maybe even web applications. And one of the things that has come out in earlier part of this year, again from Posit, has been the brand.yaml utility to help kind of give you that customization, especially for web-based, deliverables in one place, a single YAML that you could apply in many different situations, whether it's Shiny apps, quarter reports, our Markdown reports, and the like. Well, I think now in this last high, we're going to have at our disposal kind of a use this kind of wrapper on top of brand.yaml in the early stages here. And this is a new R package from this year called rbranding. This is authored by Willie Ray and Andrew Pulsifer. And this, I believe I may have seen a presentation about this. I don't know if that was at the ShinyConf, but it does sound vaguely familiar. But what rbranding does is it basically gives you some nice quality of life wrappers to help interact with the management and getting custom templates going built upon brand.yaml. So what it lets you do is that it lets you initialize a new branding project, and then you can choose where it's stored remotely. It supports at this time either storing on a public GitHub repo, or if you're in an organization, a private GitHub repo of sorts. And it lets you easily manage grabbing the config information from that brand.yaml stored remotely into your local project. So you still have kind of a single source of truth for where you store your branding project. And then along the lines of this, as I mentioned, rbranding will let you apply all of these techniques, all of these customizations across what brand.yaml supports. That would be, of course, quarter reports, our Markdown reports, Shiny applications, and one thing that really caught my eye with this package, even themed plots in the ggplot2 ecosystem and on the kind of intersection of Shiny with BSlib and thematic, so you can have that unified theme approach across not just your app's UI, but also the plots that you're producing as well. That's always a plus 100 to me, because a lot of times I get in kind of dicey situations where I got this great theme and I realized, oh, geez, my plot was too custom to figure that out. So I'm interested to see if our branding is going to help in that side of it too. And again, one of the other things on the package site, which I'll link to in the show notes, is it's got a boatload of templates for you to see just what a finished product might look like. And you could build upon that or extend it across these different paradigms. For a simple Quarto site, they got you covered. A Git template for Quarto. Even a Quarto report that implements ggplot2 to, again, get that unified theming, you can get it right there. And there are actually 3 different Shiny templates. This is really intriguing to me, such as the very basic histogram version, or that K-means app that we'd often see in the Shiny gallery, and a more complex app as well, which again has a dashboard kind of layout, but you could easily take this and run with it. And lastly, a even more complex app with multiple tabs. Looks like some BSlib action going there with a wastewater data visualization. So this is a great way. If you heard about brand YAML and you're kind of thinking, well, it sounds good, but how do I really manage it in practice across multiple projects? I think our branding could be a very unique utility to put in your toolbox for your branding adventures. And it looks like, according to the package site here, both Lily and Andrew look to be supporting the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Center for forecasting and outbreak analytics. So that tells me they've been using this quite extensively in production, which is always a great thing to see. So great. And last but certainly not least, on the package site, they have a great tutorial on accessibility, which is something we've been, very big champions of here on our weekly across the different venues of UI toolkits. I think they got some great checklists about what you should do with a dashboard design, avoiding common pitfalls, about lots of things that we may see talked about in various presentations and documents. But they're kind of putting this in one place with links to how you can test your various website or Shiny app for accessibility compliance. Really great stuff. And you have cheat sheets about this too. So the documentation of our branding is top notch. And like I said, I'm going to be putting this in my toolbox for my branding adventures.
Likewise, Eric. And I think this package really helps solve a problem that we've had, maybe you've had, and a lot of folks have had in terms of sort of managing or passing around that _brand.yaml file from project to project, because you want to consistently utilize it so that all of your projects have the same sort of thematic elements and look similar and match your corporate color palettes and things like that. But you also want a place where that can potentially be updated over time, and we have a good version history of that. And there's a few different options, that we've used in the past that haven't been great. Things like GitHub template repositories for that, as well as what was the other one that I was thinking of? Developing like a internal R package that essentially has a function in there that creates your brand.yaml file. Right. But this is a much more straightforward way to do that. So you can manage that brand.yaml file in its own GitHub repository potentially, and then download that and leverage it in the project that you're working on at hand. So excellent work done. It's nice to see kind of the intersection of an organization like CDC being able to put out something in the public for us that we can leverage. So that is awesome, contributing to open source. And the package down site is fantastic as well. As you mentioned, there's a whole entire article on accessibility guidelines, sort of beyond the templates as well that they provide, and some of the additional articles that they have. But I really enjoyed sort of going through their general design principles for accessibility, which are kind of these 5 principles on making content perceivable, making your interactions operable, which I am probably guilty of overusing some interactions and collapsible elements and things like that probably reduce accessibility. So this was a good way for me to sort of stop and think about some of the projects that we've worked on and the Shiny apps that we've done recently, and some potential redesign choices that we could make. The last 3 are make the structure understandable, make the data accessible, and design for consistent behavior, which kind of touches on modularity, code modularity, and things like that. So I really enjoyed reading through that article. Specifically, it talks about dashboard design good practices, bad practices, a lot of pitfalls around text and alt text and things like that. So great new package to have out there for those of us who are trying to maybe create Shiny apps from project to project that look similar and don't look completely different, like I may have been guilty of in the past.
I can relate to that, but also sometimes you may be dealing with, like in your case, a client that does have very opinionated guidelines, and maybe you hopefully get more than one project with them, and then you can say, oh, guess what? We can use the same assets from this app to this other report. And even in my company, yeah, we're one company, right? But even different teams have different needs for various things. Maybe a discovery group doesn't care as much about certain things as a communications group, where yours truly literally had to make a Shiny app that was a glorified PowerPoint maker of a custom theme. Yeah, that wasn't pleasant. If they can just get with the times and do web-based reports, then I can use rbranding to do that and probably solve like 90% of that pain that I had to deal with. But you're not here to listen to me rant about PowerPoint. You've heard enough about that over the years of this show.
That's what happens when we've been off the mic for a few weeks.
Yep, it's pent up, Mike. It just got to get out somewhere. But luckily, I think I've got out some pretty good stuff, I would say, in these summaries. And speaking of good stuff, there's a lot of good stuff in this issue. It was actually pretty tough to determine what would be the 10 candidate stories for the highlights. There was a heck of a lot to choose from. So it's a lot of fun to curate this. Lots of great packages that are being thrown out there. I could talk all day about these, but we do have our respective day jobs to get back to. So we'll kind of wrap things up here. But as you probably guessed, the end of the year has been pretty crazy for us. We hope to at least get 1 or 2 more episodes in before the end of the year. We'll see what happens on a scheduling side and hopefully come back even refreshed for the next year as well. But what can refresh us? Well, hearing from all of you in the community is always one of the biggest ways that I get my jam, so to speak. And there are lots of ways you can do that. You can, in your favorite podcast player, just hit that little contact page in the show notes and you can send us a message right then and there. If you want those modern podcast apps like I've been using and many others in the Linux community have been using, you could send us a fun little boost there too if you like to send us a little fun message. But also, we are available on social media as well. You can find me on Blue Sky with @ourpodcast at bsky.social. You can find me on Mastodon where I'm @ourpodcast at podcastindex.social. And I'm on LinkedIn. When I'm not causing too much trouble, you can search my name and you'll find me there. And Mike, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at mike-thomas.bsky.social. Or you can find me on LinkedIn if you search Ketchbrook Analytics, KETCHBROOK. You can see what I'm up to.
Awesome stuff. I know you you and I both had our recent PositConf talks now available on YouTube as well. So if you haven't seen Mike, if you weren't there in person to see Mike's fantastic talk, go on YouTube and watch it. It is required viewing, especially if you're in the interoperability intersection of R and Python. You framed it in a way that I could never do enough justice for. So required viewing, my friend.
Well, for those in the Shiny space looking to improve their caching workflows, Eric's talk is certainly required viewing in my view.
I'm getting the itch to get back to Shiny state development, buddy. I've got some ideas. Some people are clamoring for that investigation into using Golem or Rhino for it. So I got some homework to do. So hopefully I'll be able to stream some of that as well. But in any event, this is audio, so we're going to close up shop here. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 214 of our Weekly Highlights. And hopefully within a week or sooner or later, and we don't know yet, we'll be back with another edition of our Weekly Highlights very soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. Standing for Just Another R Linter, authored by, look up their name,
I wouldn't believe you.
We'll have to edit that one.
Did I time that right?
A little bit.
No sirree, Bob.
Nonetheless, okay. You corpsed me there. All right.